Now it's time for another Board Game Brawl preview with Nick Meanahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Human Punishment Social Deduction 2.0 and is from Godot Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I of course am going to urge you to go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information for yourself. You can follow the links in the top corner of your screen as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you to the page, you can find out more information and hopefully consider backing the project. Now, Human Punishment is a social deduction team-based game. The story of the game is that in the future, humans, as they are wont to do, have made AI that has gone out of control. They thought that they were making pliable servants, but instead they have minds of their own, and now they are the robots, are the machines specifically, are going to unleash a virus that will kill all of the humans. Of course, the humans don't want that to happen. So, in this game, you are either going to be a human or a machine, or you're going to be one of the outlaws who are in it for themselves, trying to play both sides against the middle. But in true social deduction game fashion, you're not going to know who is on your side at the beginning of the game. You have to find that out for yourself, and sometimes you have to do it in the most lethal way possible. So, with all that being said, let me give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype version of the game. So just bear that in mind that what you see here may change in the final version of the game, but then we're going to come back and we will discuss it further.
Human Punishment is a competitive, team-based, hidden identity game. It's best played with 5 to 6 players, but could be played with as few as 4 players and as many as 16 players. Players are secretly working for one of 3 main factions: the humans, the machines, or the outlaws. At the beginning of the game, you won't know who's on your side or who's against you. Humans need to eliminate the machines and the outlaws. Machines only need to eliminate the humans, and outlaws need to win on their own, last man standing style. It's even possible for one of the special character IDs to start their own extra faction during the game. Whichever faction can meet their condition first will win. The setup for each game is different based on the number of players. Place the required weapons in the middle of the play area. The rocket launcher and laser are placed as well, but they're flipped to their locked side at the start of the game. Every character needs to get an ID card, which will stay hidden from the other players unless the card specifically says otherwise. Depending on the number of players, a certain amount of random ID cards from each faction are shuffled together, then one is dealt to each player, with any remaining ID cards tossed aside without looking at them. IDs have a few important elements. Each one favors one of the 3 main factions, as indicated by the color of their name. This does not guarantee they will actually be of that faction, as I'll explain in a moment, though some IDs do say that they must always be of a specific faction regardless of other factors in the game. Every ID also has a special ability. Often it is only used once when that ID is revealed during the game, but sometimes it's a permanent or triggered ability. Some have dramatic effects, like the Mind Eater, who creates its own special factions, as I mentioned earlier, called the Masons, and others who can stave off death or even resurrect players or themselves. Next are the loyalty cards. Every faction has their own loyalty cards, as well as special cards that count twice. Again, according to the player count, a certain amount of each faction's loyalty cards are shuffled together, and 2 cards are dealt to each player, which they keep hidden on either side of their hidden ID card. Now, each player can examine their 2 loyalty cards and their 1 ID card and determine their allegiance secretly. A clear majority of any faction's cards mean you are that faction, unless your ID overrides that, and remember that some loyalty cards count twice for the depicted faction. If there is a tie among the factions depicted on your cards, that would make you an outlaw, which means there are 2 ways to become an outlaw. The last part of setup is giving each player 1 program card unless otherwise stipulated by your ID ability. Programs are special action cards that you keep to yourself until they're triggered. They can be permanent or activate their ability once before being discarded, and so on. You can only ever have a maximum of 2 at a time, again, unless your ID says otherwise. Much like ID effects, programs can have a dramatic impact on the game, allowing you to do things like check other players' loyalty cards or their ID, disarm other players, or even skip their turns. Some programs actually modify players' loyalty, meaning you might change allegiances during the game. When the setup is finished, choose the start player, who will become the first active player and get the card indicating that to remind them of what options they have for their action. If they start the turn with a weapon, the card is flipped to the active armed side instead. If the active player doesn't have a weapon, they have 4 options for their 1 action per turn, in addition to any program cards they'd like to play on the side. First, they can secretly look at the loyalty card of one other player. If their loyalty cards have both already been revealed, you can examine their ID card instead. 2 of the actions that you can take are to grab either a pistol or a rifle from the center of the play area, then immediately aim it at another player. Nothing happens just yet, though. We'll get to that in a moment. Lastly, you have the option to use your action to draw 1 program card, though if you have more than 2 cards at the end of the turn, you'll have to discard down to 2. Now, if you do start your turn with a weapon aimed at someone, the turn will go down differently for you. Once again, you may only take 1 action and then end your turn. But now, you have different options. You can either drop the weapon, change your target, or shoot the player you're already targeting. If a player is hit by the rifle, the targeted player must reveal their ID if they can. If they can't, they take 2 damage. Since all players start with 2 hit points and you can't go above that amount, that can be fatal. Regardless of how it turns out, you drop the rifle back to the center of the table after you take your shot. The pistol functions the same way, but instead of the ID card, they have to reveal a loyalty card if able, and if they can't, they take only 1 damage. Afterwards, the pistol is dropped and they get to draw a program card for having dropped it. Some IDs and programs have effects that let you take the rocket launcher and laser specifically from the center of the table, which are basically better versions of the pistol and laser respectively. A killed player reveals all of their cards, but they may not discuss any hidden information that they gleaned during the time they were an active player. If the dead player was a human or a machine, you must check to see if the game is over. Everyone except the dead player will immediately close their eyes and stick out their fist. And the dead player will ask either, are there machines or outlaws left, or are there any humans left, depending on the situation. If there are, in either case, those players will give a thumbs up, but not indicate what exactly they are. If that happens, the dead player will say this and the game will continue, with everyone lowering their hands and opening their eyes, and the dead player saying nothing further. If no one raised a thumb, the game is over and one of the factions will have won. After you've completed your action for the turn, you will pass the active player card to the next person in line, and that's it. The game will continue this way until one faction has clearly won. That is human punishment.
Well, there's a lot of very interesting things going on in human punishment right from the get-go. From the start of the game where you have to decide, hand out the loyalty cards, hand out the ID cards. First off, lots and lots of ID cards for every faction, or I should say for every character that is aligned with a certain faction, but not necessarily of that faction. But just so many of them with different special abilities. Some of them have really dramatic effects on the game. And then how you determine whether, what allegiance you actually have is very interesting too, because you have the multiple loyalty cards, some of them count twice, and because some of them count twice, you may get a look at someone's card and say, maybe even see their ID as well, and you're like, oh, human-based ID. Flipped over one of their cards, it's a human card. Well, they're human, right? Well, maybe not. Because if their other card is a face-down either outlaw or machine times 2, they're an outlaw instead. And that can be a really big deal if you're a human player and you're trying to determine, do I kill that person or not? And that's just one example of how things can go down, where there's this subtlety in the game, who do I really trust based on just this sliver of information that I have, and the longer I take to widen out that information to get more, the person I'm targeting might be getting suspicious. Maybe they're not on my team, and if they are, they might kill me before I can even find out and take an action on my own, because you can only do the one thing per turn. Do I grab the gun, aim it, grab the gun before someone else does? Just maybe you don't even want to kill someone, but you have to protect yourself or protect one of your teammates who is vulnerable, maybe they have 1 of their 2 hit points are gone. So, despite the fact that I think this game is very easy to learn, fast to set up, and fast to play, there is a lot going on in it. Then you add into the mix the program cards, which, again, tons. There are so many. That stack of program cards that you saw in the overview section, those were all unique. So all of them have different abilities on them, and some of them are sort of iterations of the same basic premise, but they could be things like, if you have this card, this counts as machine loyalty. So again, you could change legions during the course of the game. Some of them can save your life. You can automatically revive yourself if you're going to get killed. So they throw a wrench in the works. Like, someone thinks they've got you dead to rights. You might not be as out of it as they think that you are. But it's not an overwhelming presence of the game, so it doesn't add like a tremendous amount of randomness either. You know that someone has that program card, depending on the ID. You might have more than one or more than two program cards. And so you know they might have some trick up their sleeve, but what it is you don't know. And again, time is not your ally here. You need to make a decision every turn. You need to keep things going, so you can't hem and haw too much. You have to shoot them and hope for the best, or if they're your ally, hope that they're not going to stab you in the back, because again, you might see all of their cards. You might see both their loyalty cards and their ID card, and they have a program card that changes their loyalty. You just don't know. But despite the fact that there's all this stuff going on, like I said, the game plays pretty quickly. There's always a chance for revenge in the next game. So if you like the theme of this game, humans versus machines with the outlaws, with very high quality artwork, by the way, I should mention that really helps to bring out the flavor of the theme of the game. If you like the theme, if you like and the story behind it, if you like social deduction games that are team-based, so you're working with others, but there's that air of deduction and mystery about it. If you like any of those things, definitely, you don't need to take my word for any of this. You can go to the Kickstarter page and find out even more information than I could possibly tell you here. You can go to the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you to the page, and hopefully you'll consider backing the project. That is Human Punishment Social Deduction 2.0 from Godot Games. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.